Broken Bow fans. Hey, they're going crazy out here. I've never seen anything like it.
Still crazy about them Savages. Welcome back. Southeast Beast back for you. Skip Copeland alongside Chris Chandler. This week we recap the Broken Bow Savages win in Stilwell, Oklahoma this weekend against the Stilwell Indians. The Savages coming away with a 46-22 win, clinching a berth in the 2022 Class 4A playoffs, and one big game left. We'll take a look at that one as well. But first, let's take a look at what happened on Friday night. Chris, the Savages came out, got started early, got up on a quick touchdown.
Yeah, they did what they needed to do. I mean, right off the bat, take the opening kickoff and drive 65 yards and, look really good doing it. They stick it in the end zone on a 15-yard TD pass. Brumley was 4 of 4. Now, one of them won't count. Statistically, it was called back for a dubious penalty. There were 4 consecutive penalties on that drive, 3 against the Savages and 1 against the Indians. But they, just marched down the field, get it into the end zone, and they actually gained 75 yards of offense because they did have a 10-yard penalty that moved them back. But go up, and then the defense does what they need to do. After a bit of a sustained drive, starting at their own 23, Stilwell drives down, and Leland Billy gets a big stop and forces a punt. And then after another Brumley completion to Whitfield, there's Brumley's at about midfield, and then they throw a pick 6. And that has been something that they are going to have to work on because those short passes in space are such a big component of their offense. But this marks the second week in a row that they have had at least one pick 6 and for big yardage.
Well, they made mistake after mistake there really in the first period. After the pick 6, I thought they played pretty well on that next possession. Actually, they took the ball on the kickoff into Stilwell territory and then drove down, really had some trouble executing at the end of that possession, then couldn't execute on a field goal attempt as well and missed hold on a field goal. But in fairness there, the ball was wet, it slipped through the holder's hands, and it was just a bad play. But Stilwell made us pay for it. Come right back with a big touchdown, something we've been vulnerable to all year. It's those long touchdown passes, and they were able to slip one out on the right side of the offense and go 65 yards, add the 2-point conversion, and the next thing you know, we're trailing 14-6.
That's a big play vulnerability, and that's something that that you've got to do something about that, especially going in to the playoffs. Savages are qualified for the playoffs. We are going to be in a playoff game, and this week we'll decide where that's at. But that play was simply a well-designed fake by Stilwell, but they just slipped the running back out. Looked like it was going to be student body right. Quarterback pulls it up and finds him wide open. He's behind every member of the Savage secondary, and that's kind of thing. As a safety, that's your job. You just have to make sure that nobody gets behind you. And it was just a blown assignment by Broken Bow and resulted in 6 points. Well, very well executed by a very improved Stilwell team, but still, you can't do those things if you want to advance very far in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's just one of those things where they did pull off the fake. I had some question. I was watching the live stream. And so the first half was a little bit jittery on the live stream. It was hard for me to see, but it looked like they had a lineman downfield on that play. Of course, it didn't get flagged. It's a home game for them, but they did sell the fake very well, but they may have done it a bit illegally. I guess I could go back and look at it now that you've uploaded the new live stream and see just exactly whether that was a legal play or not. Nonetheless, it counted. 65-yard touchdown. We find ourselves at the end of one period of play. We're trailing by 8 points at 14-6, and the offense really, again, to your point, playing pretty well. Brumley's connecting with his receivers. We're just not able to finish on these drives, get something going, and finish it in the end zone. But that changes in the second quarter. We put this drive together, a really good drive, in fact, started at our own 32-yard line, carried mostly by the run. Rogers and Brumley doing a lot of work on the ground in that possession.
Yeah, and there's nothing. The one thing you really has been a constant throughout the season. We've played some games better than others. We've had execution problems, but the toughness of Camden Rogers and the toughness of Christian Brumley are unquestionable, and they showed it. They would show it every week, but especially on Friday night. The drive you're mentioning, just running up the middle and off tackle and into guys that, well, for Brumley, Brumley's a big guy, but Camden Rogers is not, but he sure runs like one.
Yeah, he does. He runs like a much bigger player than he is. And that was an impressive drive. We threw the ball one time and it was incomplete. Otherwise, everything was a run on that drive. And we drove it all the way down. Brumley took it the final 35 yards on a really nice run.
And hand it to the offensive line. They opened a hole for him. And once you get him through the hole, he's almost at full speed. When he gets to the line of scrimmage, he's near there. And if you get a gap for him, by the time he gets to that first level of linebackers, a couple of yards off the line of scrimmage, he is going full speed, and he is really hard to catch. And one of the other things I have to, again, for the second consecutive week, appreciate this Savage coaching staff. Every position is up, for grabs every week. You show that you can do it in practice. You perform in games, and you get a start. And Tramden Mulkey started on the offensive line this week and did an excellent job, just like Kyler Cubitt did last week for the defense. So it's nice to see that the Savages not only have depth, but they have some other players that are stepping up and winning a starting spot and improving themselves on the field.
Yeah, the defense really did play well. As the second quarter. They after that touchdown, that pulled us to win within 1 point, 13-14. The two teams exchanged possessions a couple of times after that, as I recall, and then then we had a fumble recovery. That's what really was the spark there. Quite right at the end of the first half, Camden Rogers came up with a fumble at the Broken Bow 46-yard line, and then the Savage offense made them pay, turned that turnover into a touchdown as well. That was a nice little drive. A couple of nice passes. Willis caught one for 21 yards, but Whitfield finished things off with a 31-yard touchdown reception. 2:25 left in the first half. The Savages added the extra point. They had the lead back at 20-14.
And you really, again, you look at Kyron Whitfield, he's the playmaker for the Broken Bow Savages. He still looks like he's at about, 50, 75%, and still is such a presence on the football field that he's one of the deciding factors out there. You throw the ball to him and he can either get open and, you can hit him in the end zone, or you can throw it to him in open space, and he just avoids tacklers and runs through them and picks up yardage and points for Broken Bow.
Yeah, a lot of penalty flags, all night long, particularly in that first half, and then a really weird possession. Stillwell, who they fake a punt from their own 36-yard line. Then they're in the end of the first period. Well, the end of the first half. I really didn't understand that at all. I didn't understand why at that point in the game, with about a minute and a half left in the first half, and they're backed up on their own end of the field, and then they fake a punt, and they don't convert, obviously. We do a good job of shutting it down, but they just gave us the football in scoring position.
It was desperation time. Keep in mind, they're playing for a shot at a playoff spot. If they win this game, they still have a chance to make the playoffs. And so, sometimes that leads to desperation. I will point out there are also a lot of personal fouls against Stilwell, a lot of unsportsmanlike conduct and late hit, unnecessary roughness penalties. And so it was a bit of a chippy game. And maybe they just, thought that, that maybe that was just arrogance or getting their swagger on or whatever. We don't care where we're at on the field. We're gonna fake this punt and show you guys. And Broken Bow, as you mentioned, responded very well to it, shut it down. It gave us great field position.
It did give us great field position, and unfortunately, the referee saw to it that we didn't get in the end zone. But we did finish with a field goal with 20 seconds left in the half. We kicked a 3-pointer and went up 23-14 at the half. And the Savages go into the locker room in this game with everything that went on in that wild first half, with all the penalties and, the chatter back and forth. You could tell the two teams, as you say, were chippy with one another. I think the coaching staff at that point were like, listen, guys, this game, we just got to go finish. We just got to go take care of our business. And the Savages did look much better in the second half.
Yeah, we came roaring out of the locker room, and especially defensively in the second half. They tried that same play where they got the running back loose behind us twice in the second half, and it did not work either time. In fact, one time I believe it resulted in an interception. The other time we almost intercepted. The ball was knocked down, and actually, I felt that it was a offensive interference penalty.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was too. First possession of the second half, we're able to go down and score, go up by a score of 29-14 at that point. And at that point, we did have control of the football game, although we did give them. I say we gave it to them. We didn't give it to them, but we gave them the football with a fumble, put them in scoring position, and they were able to capitalize on that also in the third quarter, pull to within 7 at 29-22. So things were not completely out of doubt, even though our offense is playing pretty well in the second half.
Yeah, and that's you just have to take care of the football, and that's something that at every level. I mean, you watch college football, you watch the NFL. What they're going to say is in close games and sometimes not so close games, the big difference is turnovers. That can just kill you, and that is true. Now the Savages were fairly even because the way we played on the giveaway takeaway margin, but we still killed one of our drives, and then literally they had a pick six. So again, they scored 6 points without the defense getting an opportunity to stop them.
But we finished the game. As my point in the fourth quarter is that we finished the game strong. We took each of our possessions, our final 3 possessions, we wound up scoring on, if I recall correctly, and it was really never in doubt in the fourth period. The Savages pulled away. We got a field goal right away early in the fourth quarter to go up 32-22. We did a good job of shutting them down. A big tackle for loss. Leland Billy making a big play, running a running back down on a sweep play. He probably outweighed that kid by 100 pounds, and he caught him before he ever got to the edge. That was really impressive.
Yeah, about that 100 pounds and all the rest of his weight landed right on top of the ball carrier, and we punished him. We really did a good job of playing what we're accustomed to calling Broken Bow Savage football, and that's bringing the contact. And I think that started to show at the end of the game when they started to look a little beat up and a little warier of lowering their shoulders. And keep in mind, the Philpott kid, for one, is a huge player. He's a big bruiser. He's just a sophomore, and had some success running against us early. But in the fourth quarter, we kind of shut him down. We started tackling kind of like we did in Poto. We had 3 or 4 guys flying to the ball, and then we had some great open field tackles like the one by Billy you mentioned.
Well, they made some mistakes to help us as well. I said our offense sustained those drives, but actually, as I remember it, we actually stalled on one of those drives and wound up punting to them, and they fumbled the punt, and we covered it up and then wound up getting in the end zone after that on I think a Christian Brumley touchdown run. We went up ultimately 39-22 on that possession, and then the very next possession we score on a big run. The Savages 46-22 with 4:25 left in the football game, and that ultimately wound up being the final score. 46-22 for the Savages. They go to 7-2 overall on the season, and more importantly, I think 5-1 in district play, which keeps them tied at the top of the district. Anything is possible this week, but it's a bit dim for the Savages going into this game against Ada in terms of trying to win the championship, or even trying to get a home playoff game is extremely difficult.
Yeah, Ada comes in with 2 district losses. The Savages just have one, just the one against Hilldale. But because it is against Hilldale, and because we only had 1 marginal point in our victory over Medill, you look at even if we beat Ada, we likely go into a 3-way tie, and you go to the tiebreaker, and Hilldale won the head-to-head against us. They're going to, probably be the champion. Now this is if neither Fort Gibson nor Salisaw pull off an upset against, 2 of the top teams in the district. But so we're looking at us and Ada basically playing, barring an upset, playing for the 3rd versus 4th position in district. If they win the game, then we both have 2 losses. They have the head-to-head, and so then they would win the first level of tiebreaker. We'd be 4th, they'd be 3rd. But anything can happen. You look at some teams like Fort Gibson Sallisaw. I mean, Sallisaw is winless. You look at those guys; for the seniors, it's going to be their last time to suit up. They have no hopes of playing in the playoffs, so maybe they'll get an upset over Poto or Hilldale and put us back into the top. But we have to beat Ada at home to do that, and it is senior night for Broken Bow as well.
It is, and the Cougars come into town first time in a while that they've been on the regular season schedule for the Savages. They come in with a pretty strong season behind them compared to where they were at this time last year. They still are in playoff contention. Obviously, I think, in fact, they've clinched. Yeah, Broken Bow and Ada both have clinched a playoff position. And so right now, really what it looks like because of those marginal points is the winner of this football game will go on the road to Wagner in week 1. The loser goes on the road to number 1 Cushing in week number 1. So neither one of those two things is going to be an easy task. But in this particular season, I'm going to take Wagner over Cushing.
Yeah, that you don't say that many years,
No.
but Cushing just you look at Cushing, at the record, at the margin of victory, and then just look at that team on video, and there's a reason they're ranked at the top of 4A4, and they are the prohibitive favorite to win the state championship. But and again, it's good if it's a road game. You go to the Dale Condick Coach Wagner team, which they hold the longest winning streak in state history. Not this year, obviously it has ended, but a team with multiple state championships there. But they're down a little this year, but still that is a tough place to play. And you look at a team with a tradition of winning like that, you're going on the road to play at their place, and you're going to face a tough game. But the Savages would much prefer that over going to Cushing.
They would. And so first things first, we've got to beat the Ada Cougars Friday night, as you mentioned, senior night at Memorial Stadium. Ada's reeling. They come off of a big loss to the Poto Pirates, and one in which they only were able to manage 59 yards of total offense. And Chris, I watched the game on live stream, and it was a mismatch up front. Poto really dominated the line of scrimmage. The Cougars couldn't get anything going all night long. They only had 1 yard of rushing in the entire football game against the Pirates. And so I like our chances against them. If you look back at their losses against Poto, that was 59 yards of offense. Against Hilldale, where they lost in Hilldale, they only rushed for 30 yards in that football game. And then when they lost to McAllister, they only rushed for 57 yards. So, the better teams, the better defensive they have faced have been able to shut this offense down. Now, the weaker opponents have given up big points to them.
And Carter Freeland is a great quarterback, and I think actually it was Brock Broyles. It was the freshman that started in one or two of those games. Well, not against McAllister, but against Hilldale.
Yeah, he played the Hilldale game.
Played the Hilldale game, but Freeland can throw the ball. I mean, as you mentioned, I believe before, he looks a lot like Brumley. And the thing is usually Broken Bow has an advantage of speed. That's not true against Ada. They have DeMontre Patterson. He's the silver medalist in 5A in the 100 meters. He's one of their receivers, and then they have Andrew Hughes, who is the 5A high jump champion. And he had 3 TD catches versus Sallisaw. He's 6'4". He can run. He can jump. And so you got a couple of guys. Plus, there's a guy named Jack Morris. He's 6'3". He's another wide receiver. They have big wide receivers that can run. So it is going to be critical for Broken Bow to own the line of scrimmage and put pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, they're very reminiscent of Medill on offense to me. Big receivers, quarterback that can sling it a little bit. They struggle to establish the run. So, at some point the Savages are probably going to pull back and say, hey, we're not going to give up the big play. We're going to just keep you in front of us. And I think they can control things if they do that. But, boy, we've shown ourselves to be prone to those long touchdown passes, and the Cougars have shown themselves to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens on Friday night.
Yeah, it could be hopefully be a big night for, the likes of Leland Billy and Kyler Cupid. Get pressure on the quarterback, get some sacks, make him worry about, somebody breathing down the back of his neck where he can't just sit in the pocket and let those plays develop.
Well, it's an important game from both of those standpoints in terms of the, playoff positioning aspect of it. Where do you play in round one? And just keeping your hopes alive because, hey, we can keep our fingers crossed that Stilwell, we're more important for us, Fort Gibson, against Hilldale is the really important game. So we'll see if a crosstown rival can keep the Hilldale Hornets at bay, potentially beat them or stay within 8 points of them anyway, and that would do us a huge favor if they could, but I'm not counting on that happening. So let's just go get it done against Ada. We'll see. We had a chance. We controlled our own destiny a couple of weeks ago. It didn't work out. This time, we do control it again. We win the game. We know we're no worse than third place. So let's go do that. Starts this Friday, Memorial Stadium. It's senior night. The Cougars are in town, 7:30 kickoff. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Southeast Beast. Until then, I'm Skip Copeland.
And I'm Chris Chandler. Remember, once a savage,
always a savage.